Hello there, how are you? Welcome back to How I Did It. Well, I had issues getting myself an extra queen. So because of that, I let this hive go longer than technically I should have. So the queen left with part of the bees out of it due to overcrowding. You'll see what I mean when I open this up. And before she left, I guess the other nurse bees knew what was fixing to happen, and they built several queen cells in this hive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer 3 frames off of this hive into the hive that you don't see in the screen of this video. I'm going to put a feeder in there with them, and with the nurse bees, the 3 frames of bees getting ready to hatch out, and the queen cells that are completely finished. Both hives will actually have new queens. The hive that we're looking at here will have 5 full frames in there between pollen, nectar, bees, larvae, and a couple of actual fully developed queen cells. So if I understand it correctly, again, remember now I'm a rookie. If I understand it correctly, when the queen bee hatches out of here, she's going to go out, she's going to do her mating flight, and she's going to come back. And because there's a couple of them that are going to come back to this hive, they'll have to decide who's going to be the queen bee. Get it? Okay, anyway, the new hive, I am going to put 1-to-1 sugar water in there and feed those nurse bees until their bees start hatching out and they actually get a foraging force going. Their queens will hatch out, go out, be mated, and come back. In theory, if it all works out the way that it's supposed to work out. Time will tell. So simply removing the flow frame off of here, it does have about 3.5 frames of nectar that's built up in it. I'm actually going to put this right back on here once I get the 3 frames of bees out of here. When I do pull the 3 frames of bees out of here, it's not going to be videoed, but I'm going to immediately transfer them into the new hive. That way, once I get everything finished up, I can get them covered back up right away. Now, as you'll see, these girls are pretty cool. I'm out here. I don't wear tennis shoes out here anymore, or flip-flops out here anymore. I always wear tennis shoes because there always seems to be ants or something down there that'll bite your feet. I don't use bee gloves. I just use the butyl gloves, like medical gloves. I don't like the stickiness on my hands. And these gloves create enough of a barrier. I have no recollection of ever being stung through these medical gloves. So now if you want something a little thicker, you can get the mechanics gloves from Harbor Freight. They're black. And those are even thicker than these. But what's nice is it really gives you great dexterity. So when you're trying to actually work these bees, you can kind of feel more of what you're doing. The other thing that's nice is I have the full bee suit. And if I have sassy girls, I'll use the full bee suit. But I love having just this jacket. It's kind of a vented jacket. It keeps the bees away from my ears and my face, to where if you do have anybody that's sassy, you'll know it because they kind of bounce off your veil. So, yeah, ask me how I know. I did have a pretty sassy group once upon a time. But it's just nice by having this, and for some reason, the bees seem primarily drawn more upward rather than down at your legs. So you can actually do this in relative comfort. Now, I'm not saying go right out there and do it right off the bat. Use your full bee suit until you get to know your girls. Some of these girls are super sweet, and then I'm telling you what, some of these other girls, they can They can be real stinkers. So just, use your own due diligence. This green frame here, Bob Binney, he says that he recommends having this in every hive, and it's mainly for drone, but you can see the queen cells that are built there on the left of that frame, and there is one on the right as well. They're still open, but when you looked up in them, it appeared like there was royal jelly in there. So maybe they were going to make even more queens. I really don't know. I opted not to kill any of the queen cells off. So if these queens hatch and they go out, they get mated, and they come back, then so be it. I'll let them work out the pecking order of who's going to take over this hive and actually lay in this hive. As you'll see, I mean, we're just cap brood. There's drone in there. You can see the bigger drone as I moved it down. I'm sorry I don't have a better picture for you, but this hive was pretty packed. And like I said, I attempted to get myself a queen, and everybody's kind of behind the eight ball right now. I was not able to do that. So I just opted to let the resident queen take off, let them build these queen cells, and now I'm doing a split. I don't know necessarily it's the right way or it's the wrong way. It's just how I did it. So uh, I just left the video run. Now note that this video is a smidge over, what, 23, 22, 23 minutes. And that's me editing down about half of the actual time uh, that I filmed to put these two hives, to separate the hives, to take a look, make sure there was no queen on my frames that I opted to pull out. I was checking that just to make sure, you never know. And then to get the other hive set up with the feeder put in there and the 1-to-1 sugar water. So it is a little bit longer, but it kind of just gives you an idea that you can actually come out. You can do this and take your time. So, come out at about 10, 11 o'clock. Usually the worker bees are all up and they're out foraging. The rest of the group that's in here, they're primarily nurse bees. The ones that you hear kind of buzzing the camera and buzzing me, those are the guard bees that are always left behind at the hive. And again, the bees that are working here, the bees that are guarding, and the bees that are getting nectar are all girls. The only boy bees are the ones that come off typically the green frame. They can be on your other frames as well. Those are all boys, and the only thing the boys are used for are to go out with the virgin queens. They breed other virgin queens, so your queen will go off. She won't breed with her offspring, and then she'll come back. But the drones that she creates, they will go out and they will breed other queens in the area and then that way um, the bee population continues. Life will find a way, right? I'm right there with you. I'm like, move your arm, show me the frame, move it down so I can see it better. But as you can see, these frames are just absolutely loaded. I'm really kind of bummed that I didn't, in retrospect, I didn't keep that queen that I had in here. But she was 2 years old, so she was coming up at the end of her lifespan for this hive anyway. Um, but she has this thing just loaded. And again, you can see down there on the right hand corner of that frame are totally encapsulated queen cells. So why I'm being so careful when I'm separating those and using the smoke to make all the bees move out of the way. Bees can sense like when one of their buddies got killed or whatever, there's like a odor that they put off. And so I'm a little bit OCD to make sure that they get out of the way, that I don't squish them. And again, I'm just verifying 100% that there is no queen here, but you can see, I mean, it is just solid, solid, solid brood. That one I opted to go ahead and pull over into the other hive. I think there was one other one that I just inadvertently missed stating it. Yeah, there was actually a couple of them that I pulled off. I put into the other hive. Again, I edited out that lateral movement just to try to shorten this up. And there again are more queen cells. Now you can see the bottom's open on that one, but the other two, the bottom was closed. So I went ahead, opted to move that one over as well. Bees don't like that camera for some reason. I don't know if it's because I'm wearing a headset that it sounds so loud. Now also know, even though that we have a flow going on right now, I did reset up, you may have seen one of my shorts, I did reset up my bee feeders, the tub as well as my bird feeders to convert that I converted to bee feeders. Primarily because I wanted to make it easy for these girls to have a immediate access to nectar source while they're waiting for that queen to return, and while they were waiting for some of the brood to hatch out of here. Once the brood starts hatching, then they will have all the resources that they need to actually go back out and get the nectar and the pollen that they want themselves. Okay, at that point where I stepped away, I went ahead and closed up the other hive, and I brought in a couple of blank frames that I'm going to set back in with these girls here. Now, Bob Binney recommends putting a green frame like this in every one of your hives. I think primarily it's easy to identify your drone comb because the cone shapes on these green frames, if you look at them compared to the black ones or the yellow ones that you have, your regular frames, the plastic foundation, the cone shape is actually bigger, which the bees will build it out bigger, and that's specifically for the drone bees or the males. I was actually going to set this up instead of 10 frames in there. I was going to only do 9. But then I thought with the simple workforce that you can see that they still have, and again, those center 3.5, 4 frames are solid brood with a little bit of nectar and pollen around the top, around the outside, kind of like that rainbow that everybody talks about. So I decided that I needed to go ahead and just put another empty frame in there. I really should have put the empty one on the side closest to us here. Again, it's funny what you see when you're editing it out compared to when you're actually physically out there working the bees. But as you can see, I already removed 3.5 frames out of, or I'm sorry, 3 frames out of this hive right here. And this thing is still just loaded with these girls. So that's my half of my Swiffer sheet. I use that for my hive beetles. Since I started using Swiffer sheets, the dry Swiffer sheets, cut it in half, I have had 0 issues with hive beetles. Now I also sprinkle diatomaceous earth under the bottom of the hive, and then that other pad that I put on there is the long release or slow release oxalic acid pad. Even though I don't have a queen in here, I'm going to just go ahead and set up the queen excluder because I am going to put the flow frames back on the top of this hive. And here I'm just removing the propolis and part of the dry Swiffer pad that was left on the queen extruder. And these are metal. I have used plastic in the past, but because I'm using the Flow Hive, and it's actually the Asian version of the name brand Flow Hive, I find that the metal excluders work much better with the flow frame setup. Just that easy. Everything's back together. Like I said, I put the other girls together, and now I just ran to get the feeder and the 1-to-1 sugar water, so the 3 flames of girls will have a nectar source inside of their hive. You'll also notice I use a hive reducer, and those red reducers are a nice another tool to kind of help with hive beetles. Keeps the hive beetles out. I picked those up at Barnyard Bees. And there you look at my feeder and the girls, they're all settled in. And we're done for the day. Alrighty then, I want to thank you all for stopping by. Have an absolutely wonderful and blessed day. I'll see you next time. Take care.